I think we're right on time, so let's get started. When Ruben asked me to select a topic, I was going through all my data and looking for interesting topics, and I specifically selected this one. And to be honest, the data that I'm going to present today does not include any GPU.
What?
Very, very strange. Now this is actually an interesting topic. It doesn't require a GPU. Of course, there's benefits I'm going to show you, but it applies to all environments. So it's definitely interesting content. So to look at, should we go to the agenda? Of course, we have the topic itself, but I first want to start with the introduction about myself, and of course, GoEUC, the platform we're using. So to start with myself, my name is Ryan Ververs-Bijkerk. The Ververs is like refresh in Dutch. I'm a consultant at ICT Partners. I work at implementations for VDI solutions, but also do a lot of performance troubleshooting. Quite active within the community itself. I got awarded this year with the CTA, part of the TeamRGE family, and a VD expert. So if you want to reach out to me, of course, there's my contact information, and of course my personal blog where I write a lot of stuff, but it's quite generic. There's also some dev stuff in there. So let's talk about, in this case, still ICTR. The time that I proposed my session, the platform was still called ICTR, but please forget the name because it's called GoEUC now. So I think last month, we announced the rebranding, and the reason behind it is that we want to be more community focused and more separated from the company ICT Partners. So therefore, we decided to go with the GoEUC. So if you look at the platform that we have, it's a community research platform where we do a lot of performance testing. And we do this kind of performance testing because we love to do research with new technologies. I'm a nerd. I love to play with the latest releases of all the different software, but especially to break them. We just recently started in September last year. It's really community focused. So everything that we do is free, it's open, it's for the community, but also by the community. And we are an open platform, so everybody who has a great idea can join, but also write content for themselves. We do have a primary focus on the end-using computing, and to provide a little bit of context, from the start, so September 2018, we already done more than 1,200 tests, and actually this number is not accurate; it should be more. So of course, this kind of platform costs some money, and therefore the company I work for is proudly powered by powering the platform itself. So with the platform, we really want to be on top of the world. We want to work together with the best community experts and share all the interesting stuff about all the new technologies. But when I ask my colleagues, they often think that I'm relaxing on the beach, drinking a cocktail because I'm always traveling and going to all the various events. But in reality, it's more like sitting in a plane, drinking the cocktail. But to be honest, I don't like cocktails. I'm more a beer guy, so you can always make me happy with a good IPA. But doing all this kind of community researches, it's costing a lot of effort. So often you see me laying on the couch, exhausted with doing all the tests and analysis. So it takes a lot of energy, and I'm doing this besides my daily job at my customers. But in the end, it's a team effort. I'm not doing this alone by myself. It's an entire team. So these are the current active members that are really involved within the community of GoEUC. So the reason we're doing is we thinking doing this research is creating new knowledge. It's providing insights, and the insights we can use to implement at my customers. But it's also valuable for you all, for all the consultants out there, and you can use all the information we published for your own knowledge, also to implement at your customers, and for the people working at the companies, it's valuable information. So everything we do, we published on this website. So it's www.go-euc.com. It's open. We quite often publish new results. You don't have to register. There is no registration required. Everything is open. So I really recommend to just look through all the different research. I think there's currently like 21 already since September. There's also a nice button on the right side. It's the Slack channel, so you can also join the channel where we share all the info. But you can also have an inside peek what's going on within the lab itself. So to do these kinds of researches, you need some infrastructure. And as buying hardware, it's quite an investment. We decided to rent the hardware at OVH. So we currently are renting 2 hosts. To be honest, it's free right now, but this is still based on the previous infrastructure. But currently we have 2 infrastructure hosts, which are some minimal specs, and we have a testing host, which is a big server, which has more specifications. So to look at the roles that we install, of course, all the infrastructure components are installed on the infrastructure part, including the launchers from LoginVSI, which represents the endpoints. And the testing host is purely dedicated for the workload itself, so the VDI or the service-based computing workload. Right now, we decided to go with the VMware hypervisor as our default, but we're not locked to that. We're open, we can just switch it. And by default, we are using the Citrix delivery as the default, and this is all based on the VDI like a Pro data. So everything that we test and publish, we primarily do with LoginVSI. So LoginVSI is the industry benchmark solution. It's simulating users, so opening real applications, and we use this as our general tool to generate load on the environment. So to give a little bit of perspective of the research that we do, it's not just a single test and comparing 2 testing results to each other. We're doing a really thorough test, which is fully automated. So a single scenario that we do consists of 10 testing cycles itself. So to provide a little bit of perspective, it takes like 24 hours to complete 1 single scenario, and that's just 1. You need at least 2 to compare. 1 scenario, it results like 360 MB raw text data that we need to go through. And everything that we at least collect and published are all averages based on the 10 results. So we're not using only the LoginVSI data. Of course, you need to have a full perspective. So therefore, we're also collecting data from the hypervisor. We're collecting data from the launcher, which is representing the endpoint perspective. And we're using Remote Display Analyzer to capture the data from the protocol itself. So for those who don't know it, there's a logging mode within Remote Display Analyzer where you can get the output of the RDA to CSV data. It's really, really valuable. So that's the introduction. So let's go to the visual quality profiles itself. So to provide a little bit more context, the visual quality profile within Citrix is the setting where you can desire the visual quality for the images, which are displayed towards your endpoint itself. So by default, the quality setting within the policies is medium when you don't configure it. But there are other options. So you have the low, which is recommended for a bandwidth constrained scenario. So when you're in a branch office location, it's recommended to use this one. The medium is yeah, the one in the middle. It's also the default one, so they say it's the best performance and the best bandwidth efficient. The high is recommended when you want to have a little bit higher of the image quality itself. And then you have the build to lossless. So this one is interesting, as it's actually basically quite similar as the always lossless. It tries to send the best quality towards your endpoint, but it adapts towards your constraints, your bandwidth constraints. But looking at the always lossless, it always sends the highest quality towards the endpoint. So it's not adapting towards the bandwidth capacity itself. So for this research, we specified an interesting testing scenario. So on the left side, you can see the configuration that we used. So in this case, we used the Windows 10 build 1809 using a 2 vCPU configuration with 4 gigs of memory. So by default, we have the Office 2016 installed using the 1811 Citrix VDA, and of course, as best practice, we optimize the image. So it's important to understand that TCP is used by default, and therefore we also specified the UDP in a separate scenario. So on the right side, we have the scenario specified. So represented in the blue, which is our baseline, we use the default setting of the quality profile, which is medium. So in orange, we switch to low, in gray to high, in yellow high with EDT, which is the UDP protocol. So we opened the required firewall ports. In the light blue, the build to lossless, and the green, the always lossless. So the only thing that we have changed during these scenarios is just the visual quality profile itself. So nothing else has changed within the environment. Before going to the results, there's a slight modification that we have done. We removed the VSR progress bar to ensure it's not affecting any results from the protocol perspective. As you can see, there's a little shiny thing at the bottom, and we want to ensure that nothing is influencing the results. So therefore, we removed the entire progress bar of VSI. Please note, this is not a best practice and also not recommended to remove. So the first metric we're going to look at is the VSR max, and the VSR max is representing the overall capacity on the server side. So if you're looking at the results, and especially towards the medium, low, high, and the high with EDT, there's almost no difference in the capacity perspective. But switching to always lossless, you see a drop within the capacity, as the quality requires more resources to send over the higher quality. This also applies to the build to lossless, as it also requires more resources, but it can adapt based on the constraints. So looking at the baseline, and the baseline is the responsiveness within the session. So please note, this is within the session itself. It doesn't affect any protocol information or protocol resources. And you can see that the experience that is delivered within the VDI itself, there's no difference between the quality settings. And it makes sense, right? Because we're changing only the quality that sends over to the endpoint. So comparing this to the host CPU utilization, we see a similar trend as the VSR max result. So again, the always lossless and the build to lossless require more resources, and therefore results in a higher CPU utilization. So looking at the storage perspective, we see no change there. There's a slightly increase in the reach with the build to lossless, but this is not caused by the quality change itself, and this is also for the writes, which makes sense because sending over the images towards the endpoint requires CPU resources and does not require any storage capacity, as it's all processed by CPU and not on disk. So looking at the protocol itself, so this is measured by a remote display analyzer. And here you can see the amount of frames that is sent over the protocol. And here you can see that the build to lossless is really successful in sending a lot of frames towards your endpoint, as it can adapt the quality based on the constraints. So it's quite successful. But when looking at the CPU required for processing all the qualities, you can really see that always lossless and build to lossless are really standing out. And it requires way more resources to process and encode all the frames towards the protocol. Of course, there's a note. Using GPU technology, you can lower these resources, but I didn't test it yet, and I don't have the data yet to prove it. So it's a nice scenario for us to at least research. Looking at the route trip times, which is representing the latency towards the session, you can also see that the higher quality has an effect on the latency towards the session. And it requires just more resources. And here you can see the bandwidth, which is also sent out towards the to the endpoint. And this one you really can see that low is really efficient in sending a low amount of bandwidth over your network. So when using or when located in a branch scenario, maybe you should consider the low quality. Again, here you see the similar trend with the always lossless and the build to lossless, as it required more resources, also in a bandwidth perspective. Now, this is also an interesting one because also, as Benny mentioned, a lot of people are forgetting the endpoints, which are really important to deliver a good quality of the experience. And as you can see here, when using the especially the build to lossless, it's require also more resources on the endpoints. So when switching towards this quality profile, you need to ensure that the endpoints can handle the amount of resources. So please really don't forget that when playing around with the qualities, as it can really affect the user experience. So let's summarize. In general, the visual qualities have different use cases. You need to pick the appropriate profile based on your scenario. I explained the difference, the profiles itself with the description. It's all on the Citrix website, so be aware what the different profiles does. So overall, and from a capacity wise, we see a minimal difference besides of the build to lossless and the always lossless, which require a little bit more CPU resources. However, it does affect the resources within the protocol, as the different scenarios have the difference in the bandwidth, CPU, and the round trip time. But again, don't forget the endpoints, as it is an important part for the overall user experience. So one last shout out: if you want to join the community, there's a QR code on the slide itself, and we have a Slack community. Please, if you have great ideas for interesting researches, please share those. And if you want to write yourself, you can use our platform to do the researches together with us and write the interesting topics, or maybe present here at TeamRGE event. But the most important thing is that you need to test yourself, so you have the data and the proof to for all the changes you want to make. I think it's right on time. Thank you, guys.